likely to be long lasting. I think he makes a really good point that what COVID highlighted was not just the illiberal tendencies of those in public offices around the country, but of the public itself. All of the things that occurred, he writes, not a product of COVID itself, which is just a virus, or of some carefully drawn up plan by scheming politicians, most of whom couldn't organize a piss up in a brewery. I love the English. But rather of the pre COVID cultures of fear and illiberalism, of the contemporary tendency for viewing every crisis as an apocalypse, of the trend for sacralizing safety from risk, sickness, even from other people's offensive words over everything else, of the cavalier way in which freedom of dissent is treated as a negotiable commodity and in which democracy is paid lip service but not treated as a serious thing, not understood as the best way of making decisions and shaping the future. Yeah, there's a powerful paragraph right there. For more on where we go as more and more of the country is reopening, getting over their fear and illiberal impulses, we're pleased to be joined again by Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, author of Trumponomics. Steve, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Amy. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, I mean, it's a sort of a thing, isn't it? The thinking about how important entrepreneurship is to the American story and this culture of fear and illiberalism that is being inculcated generation after generation. I mean, obviously, there's still some wildly successful entrepreneurs and going concerns and will recover based on the infrastructure we had and the personnel we had pre-COVID. But going forward, boy, that you have to speak to those pathologies of fear and illiberalist impulses.
You know, we've become a kind of country of wusses. You know, and look, I'm not trying to understate the severity of this virus. It was very severe, and we lost 500,000 Americans, most of them elderly, but still, it was a huge toll. But if you had told me a year ago, Dan and Amy, that we would shut down our economy for almost a year, our schools for a year, our churches for a year, our our activities, that we wouldn't be able to go out with our friends and do things, it's been, in my opinion, one of the greatest mistakes our country's ever made. And I think there is an ideological. I know the polls are very clear about this. You know, Democrats, people vote Democratic are about 75% of them say they're very worried about COVID. And they've been saying that for, the last 9 or 10 months, whereas Republican voters, only about 30% of them say they're very worried about COVID. So there's almost a cultural political shift here. I mentioned last week on your show that, you go to a red state and it's almost like you're in a different country from a blue state now in terms of what you can do, what you can't do, the people's attitudes about a business and it's troubling to me. I hate to see this in America. We got to man up.
Well, Stephen Moore, I got to tell you, one of my neighbors, I said, why don't you take off your mask? You've been vaccinated, excuse me, words are hard, for 14 days. You're 14 days out. Why not? And she said, well, then I feel like I'm supporting Trump. And I just say, that just spoke volumes to me. That? So I think that this, the mask culture in Chicago is going to continue. And you're right, we still can't go to school or church, but you can go to a strip club and a casino.
Yeah. And, look, I think I've said this before in your show, but, it bears repeating that, I grew up with my parents grew up in the generation of polio.
Oh, yeah.
Polio was a terrible.
Well, that affected the kids. It didn't affect adults.
Exactly. Literally a kid would have a fever one day and the next day they'd die or they'd be paralyzed or they'd be in an iron lung. And I would have been truly terrified if I had grown up in the era of polio. I would have been terrified of that because it was such a killer disease, and also it paralyzed you. And I remember my parents said, we just soldiered on. Everybody was afraid. We were afraid of this terrible virus, but we didn't shut everything down. People didn't stop going to work. People didn't stop going, to school. Actually, they did close down swimming pools and things like that. But life went on, and now it's something weird about our society today that everybody's and now they're saying, by the way, Dan, climate change is the next one. We're going to have to shut down the economy for that to save the planet.
I understand from Chuck Todd, climate change is going to cause more viruses and thus the need for more shutdowns and so on and so forth. No, you're right. Those are going to be the arguments in the offing. I wanted to get a little bit of econ chalk talk in here. You recently wrote a piece, good one. A lot of people focus on Venezuela as the cautionary tale from South America at present, but you point up another one, and that's Chile, and
Uh-huh.
where Chile went under the Chicago Boys once upon a time versus where Chile is
Right.
today when they decided to abandon free market policies, and that being another cautionary tale for America.
So thank you for asking me about this. I wrote that column a few days ago, and I write a column once a week. I've had a huge response on that one. It really struck a nerve with people. And the 2 minute tale here is that, as you just said, back in the mid 1970s, Chile brought in the University of Chicago free market economists, Milton Friedman and others, and they instituted they instituted free market reforms. They had a flat tax. They privatized their Social Security system. They instituted a system of property rights and a rule of law and the kinds of things that you need. We all know you need for a prosperous economy. And it was amazing. It was one of the great economic miracles of the 20th century. Chile went from being one of the poorest countries in South America to one of the richest in just 30 years. And in fact, their per capita income almost tripled in 30 years, which is that is a miracle to see that kind of advance in living standards. And what happened is what the leftists and the Marxists always hated these free market reforms from the very beginning, and they did everything they could to try to disrupt and unravel them. And they start even as Chile was becoming richer and becoming one of the richest countries in South America, they started with this kind of propaganda campaign about, oh, it's unequal, it's unjust, only the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. And look at all these rich people; they're living high on the hog, and the rest of us are suffering, and so on. And by the way, does any of this sound familiar?
Yeah, right.
And they infiltrated the universities, they infiltrated the schools, they infiltrated the churches, the pulpits, they infiltrated the media, the movies, and it was all this, pounding away. Even as people say, no, it's not fair. It's not fair. We have to have a more just society, equality, equality. Well, about 3 years ago, the left, they had an election, and the voters voted for the leftists. Does this sound familiar? And within 3 or 4 years, Chile has just gone down the drain, and they've reversed all of the free market reforms, and it's all in the name of equality and solidarity and so on. And it's really been it is a cautionary tale, because this is exactly what's happening in America, where all our cultural institutions have been really invaded by the left, and they continue to try to destroy the goose that lays the golden eggs, which is our free enterprise system in America.
Yeah, the Chile example is an interesting one because, of course, Milton Friedman received a lot of criticism for being an advisor
Yeah,
to the Pinochet government because Pinochet was
Pinochet,
an
right?
authoritarian thug, and
Yeah,
but it shows the power of the market, the power of free enterprise, of voluntary exchange of goods and services, even with an authoritarian thug like Pinochet, and he was a tyrant like so many South American dictators over the generations. You still, hey, this is about helping the people. The political system is what it is. I can't do anything about that. But if I can move them in the direction of free market reforms, that will undo some of the damage that the tyrant is doing because
yes.
people will prosper. And that's exactly what happened. And then hopefully they recognize, hey, you know what? We need to throw off the chains of this dictator and really get things going in Chile. That didn't exactly happen, as you recount. But it's just a reminder that that free enterprise system has the potential to operate even in terrible conditions politically, and really provide a pathway to a better political conditions along with the economic conditions, more free
Yeah.
political conditions along with the economic conditions if you learn the lesson.
Well, exactly. I mean, and in fact, we like to think that political freedom and economic freedom go hand in hand. They don't always, but that's at least the theory. But what's really interesting about that whole era, meanwhile in South America, you had the Sandinistas taking over in Nicaragua. You had Chavez taking over in Venezuela. The true leftists, and they of course destroyed their countries. But the left in the United States celebrated the Sandinistas. They celebrated I remember all the Hollywood people thought Hugo Chavez was the greatest thing that ever happened to
Oh yeah,
Venezuela.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Right?
That's Sean
And
Penn's good buddy, right?
exactly right. And so it's the American intellectual class has really let us down. There was a great column, by the way, by Gerard Baker yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, and it's related to what we're talking about, where he basically said, we're having problems in our negotiations with China right now because, as you know, the Biden administration was in Anchorage this weekend, negotiating with respect to trade and other, international issues. And China kept throwing into our faces, oh, well, even you even admit that you're a racist country and that you mistreat the poor and so on. And Gerard Baker says, what country does that? We're playing right into the hands of China, which has the worst human rights, violations in the country, in the world practically. And China's, wagging their finger at us. And where do they hear this? From America's left-wing intellectuals who talk about how racist we are, and it only plays into the hands of our enemies. We've got to, look, no country is perfect, but, there's a reason that the millions and millions of people want to come to the United States.
Before we let you go, Captain Kangaroo yesterday, Treasury Secretary, talked about infrastructure, but what people are really interested in is the prospects for the Biden tax increases that were proposed during the campaign. Give us a stop, look, and listen on that.
It's all negative, folks. I mean, it's a really bad plan. It's raised the capital gains tax to 40%. So if you own a stock and you make a profit on that, you're going to pay a 40% tax on it. It increases the death tax to 45%, almost half of everything you will own. It increases the small business tax from 30 to 40%. The corporate tax, we would go from one of the lowest, which we had under Trump, to one of the highest. It doesn't put America first. It puts America last. It's going to hurt our businesses. It's going to hurt our workers. It's going to hurt our economy. I mean, there's just no other way of looking at it. And, I just pray that the Republicans put up enough opposition and then we get at least a few Democrats to say, look, this is craziness. We're coming out of recession. We're going to pass the biggest tax increase in the history of our country. So I'm very worried about this, Dan and Amy. I think it would be a real damage. We're like adopting the Illinois, New York model for the whole country.
Steve Moore, economist, Wall Street Journal columnist, Trumponomics author. Steve, thanks for joining us.
Okay, guys. Have a great week. Take care.
You too. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
Hear about the big stories of the day, then talk about them right here on Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Are you aware that AmericanEagle.com has been designing websites since the internet started? Do you know they've helped companies large and small achieve results that they themselves thought impossible? Today, a well-designed website is an art form. There are no cookie-cutter solutions. At AmericanEagle.com, they are proud to design and develop a website that fits their client's business. Their experience shows that a well-designed website with the client's business at the forefront will bring an excellent return on their investment. Clients, from startups to medium and large businesses, have come to rely on them for a full line of website services from consulting and integration to digital strategy and marketing, hosting, and maintenance. AmericanEagle.com is the technology partner you need if you're looking for online success. They work with all kinds of companies in nearly every industry. Give the team at AmericanEagle.com a call today, 1-877-WEB-NOW-1. Let them help you achieve online results and success. AmericanEagle.com, that number again, 1-877-WEB-NOW and the number 1, 1-877-WEB-NOW-1.
You've heard us talk